Welcome to the fourth hour of the Alex Jones Show. I am Jason Bermas, and I got to tell you guys, sometimes the stars really align in a odd and weird way because, believe it or not, little old Jason Bermas happens to be an expert on the Bohemian Grove. This is a hardcover book on one of those rare investigative journalistic pieces where somebody was actually let into the Grove way back in the day and spent time with those quote-unquote elites. I call them the Predator class and their minions, but not only that, I am on a green screen, so we'll see what we can see. It'll be like a ghost book. Let's turn this one upside down. This is one of 9 of the Bohemian Grove annals that sit right before me. I literally have 9. I think there are 11 of them right now. There was one published in 2022 that is going for quite a bit of money. We're actually going to show you some of the insides of those books exclusively because this thing went mega viral yesterday, and it's so odd. I'm actually going to Oklahoma City later today, and I kind of postponed my plans because I wanted to take this opportunity when I get these calls to talk about these things. We're going to talk about the origin story of the owl. I'm showing everything upside down. This is The Long Ago and Later On by George T. Bromley, the original high priest of the Grove, and really the guy that brought this owl overseas because originally, it was actually a Buddha statue. And there's Bromley in the middle with the other people with their druidic, ritualistic attire on. Now, we got a lot of this to cover. Alex Jones talked about a couple of his older films, obviously Dark Secrets, Inside Bohemian Grove, but others that went into the occult. I'd like to point out these 2 bad boys that I still have from my InfoWars days that get into Skull and Bones and Bohemian Grove. You've seen the David Gergen confrontation. That's in 9/11, Rise of the Police State, martial law. And then American Dictators talks about that Skull and Bones network at a time that John Kerry was kind of running this faux campaign to lose. By the way, there's a lot of evidence John Kerry beat Bush and didn't challenge the election because even way back in those days, 2004, guess what? There were election integrity issues, especially with the machines, which we almost don't talk about anymore. It's all mail-in ballots, dead people, registries, et cetera, et cetera. Those are important issues. The machines have been an issue now, believe it or not, for 2 decades. And arguably, obviously, John Kerry at this point runs way more foreign policy than Joe Biden, who is a dementia-ridden puppet. So we've got the annals. We've got the documentary films. We've got the origin story of the owl. And then we also have this. And we have the Franklin scandal, which Alex Jones alluded to. He talked a little bit about it. Then he showed Anthony Hilder interviewing Gunderson. Now, Ted Gunderson was basically the head of the FBI in the Los Angeles region at one time. I interviewed Gunderson many years ago. I think it was all the way back in 2006. And he also, which we have to point out, which really muddies a lot of the waters, was part of the COINTELPRO program back in the day. And I remember that interview when he was telling me that. I was like, oh my goodness. And then he said he couldn't get into much of that. All right, I just want to point that out. But when we're talking about actual human sacrifice at the Grove, if you want the detailed story down the line, what Paul Bonacci, the witness in question that was alluded to, it is in this book. And this book is a follow-up to John DeCamp's book. And the reason I bring this book up by Nick Bryant, who also was the guy, by the way, that got the Epstein Black Book published. Mainstream media didn't want to touch it, got it published through Gawker. This just has an extensive, this is all a bibliography. These are the handwritten police reports, documentation, the FBI accounts, all of it. All right? So, obviously a lot to discuss. The books, by the way, are super interesting because they really get into, and the only reason I have that one sealed is because Alex Jones had it. For instance, this little picture right here will show this. George Bush in the middle there while he's running the CIA, and it's a big joke. He's got a bunch of spooks around him. Huh? But what I thought I would do to start this off is kind of talk about the Garcia situation and then go to another documentary film that InfoWars actually produced and put out there, Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined. And why? Because that has a section on this occultism, on this behavior of not only pedophilia, but kind of hiding and cloaking themselves in Christianity when their cremation of care ritual, which we'll illustrate a little later on, is a sacrificial ritual in which any type of conscience you have left over from the bad things that you've done, because you're expected that you might do some questionable things if you're in this network of the Bohemian Grove, okay? Let's absolve you of those, okay? Be gone, dull care. And the voice of that owl is actually Walter Cronkite. In fact, again, before we get into the documentary film and talk about Ryan Garcia, I want to pull this one out. This is one of the really interesting and I guess tough right now to get out. There we go. Because it actually also, if you get it like with the hardcover case, hard to find. These are all pretty hard to find. You get the sounds of Bohemia. And by the way, there's a lot of artwork there. The Bohemian Club itself is located in San Francisco, but a lot of recordings now, there's a lot of show tune stuff in there. You know, Alex Jones talked about the Good Shepherd and telling the story of Matthew Damon's character who gets recruited in the Ivy League while he's in drag, by the way. Just want to point, that'll come into play a little later. While he's in drag, he'd just done a show where he was basically playing a woman, singing and dancing around. He gets tapped on the shoulder because a lot of people want to talk about the Skull and Bones being some kind of a fraternity. And there are fraternal aspects to it, of course, but they're the original intelligence agencies. So they tap 15 of the best and brightest at their junior year, second semester. So basically, you're only pledging for that one semester. Then you're a member of the group just as a senior, and then you go off into the world. And later on, they take you to another place where men are dancing and singing show tunes in hula dresses, this time called Deer Island. And Deer Island is one of the places where these people will meet, etc., you know, throughout the year, every once in a while, one of their clubhouses. Now, the Grove is a 2-week encampment in the summertime that, as Alex rightly identified, was basically hijacked from artisans in the late 1800s and made into more of a political sphere. And that's another thing that we haven't discussed with the significance of the Grove. It was at the club and the Grove where they recruited Oppenheimer and others. Remember also Jack Parsons, JBL, very into the occult. Weird, right? Through that, they got the nuclear bomb and nuclear power. Okay, so this is a real political sphere. Now, let's talk about Garcia quickly before we get into the documentary film section. Okay, again, these are free. All, if you can find them online, American Dictators, Martial Law, Invisible Empire, Fabled Enemies, everything I did over there. We want you to not only download it, put it on a thumb drive, share it, share the links. We want this stuff to keep going viral. It's as significant as ever. And you don't want to deter away from the very real stuff with what Garcia seems to be having a manic attack. I'll just be quite frank about it. And I'm a huge fight fan. For those that don't know, I actually call fights. I'm going to be calling Caged Aggression out here in Davenport, Iowa, and the Quad Cities, March 22nd and 23rd. Come on down or get the pay-per-view 2-night event. We got Pat Miletich one night, and then we got Jens Pulver, both Hall of Famers, the other night. I also do a podcast from time to time with John Fitch, another top-tier guy, UFC title, not only contender, but fought St. Pierre for that title, fought other legends, became a champion in other organizations. So, the last 5 or so years, I've been around a lot of fighters, more than I'm saying right now. And I've had some interactions, I'm just going to say this, with people that have been hit in the head a lot. And unfortunately, there are those manic episodes. Now, they played the part where Garcia talks about being held down and being forced to watch videos, and then he brings up the Grove. I would encourage people to listen to more of it, and I don't want to get too graphic, but he says that he was raped as a 2-year-old as well, and says it was at the Grove. And again, I'm not going to get into what's real and what's not, but like, if anything he said didn't happen, you know, it's going to be wild QAnon conspiracy theories, right? Adrenochrome mania. And by the way, Nick Bryant believes kind of the adrenochrome story comes out of that snuff film testimony that Ted Gunderson is talking about via Bonacci. So I had an interaction recently with a fighter that anybody that follows it would know, spent a lot of time with this person. And unfortunately, they've kind of gone overboard. They were unaware of a lot of the real base information that so many of us in this fight have been questioning now for decades and trying to point out things like Skull and Bones and the Grove and high-level political blackmail through pedophilia and other means. You know, high-tech surveillance, this weird occult aspect. All that's real. Okay, even, you know, and the Daily Mail just ran this story again. It must have been a new interview, but they'd run it before, on the real CIA masks that are a reality. But I'm spending time with this person, and everybody's wearing a mask. We're talking about clones and all these things that, I'm sorry, I hate to break it to you, but it's a lot of Johnny nonsense meant to discredit what we can prove and not real. He's even bringing it back to the theory of William Greer shooting JFK that Bill Cooper popularized. You know, I've watched those videos. I don't believe that that is the case. That's an old thing that's been around for decades. But my point being is that this person is kind of now obsessed with all these things and gone over the deep end. And they also illustrated what I would call more than likely tardive dyskinesia. And that, if you don't know, is the involuntary movement of your body. Now, that may just be from getting traumatized in the head many, many times. I mean, this guy was in a lot of wars, okay? But sometimes you get put on these drugs, and you get put on drugs that are painkillers. And now these painkillers are what? They're mental painkillers. They're of the SSRI variety on top of it. And they can cause these involuntary movements called tardive dyskinesia. So I'm not saying, again, I've never met Ryan Garcia. I don't know Ryan Garcia's past. I've been around fighters. I've been around those that have been hit in the head a lot. I've seen mental breaks even outside of that arena. And I would have to say that this feels like that. But again, what we need to do is take hold of the narrative and display the actual networks and the real importance of the Bohemian Grove and of the owl. And by the way, I'm going to go over this in the documentary, but the owl was chosen after a trip by Bromley overseas because of the owl's wisdom as a deity, and its also predatory nature, ability to see in the dark. Their other big slogan is "Weaving spiders come not here." In other words, don't come here with a plan to collude against us, brother. We're in this together, and we absolve ourselves of whatever sins we've done at the beginning of every encampment. So that being said, we're going to go to this clip, and this is Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined. Towards the end, it's going to talk about this network. It's also going to get into the high-level pedophilia. It's going to talk about a guy named Barney Frank, and then we're actually going to show you Paul Bonacci backing up some of the things that you see in this documentary film. It's Infowars.com, Infowars.com, or InfoWarsStore.com to get all the products. They need to get, listen, I'm not telling Alex Jones what to do, But you know what he needs to do? He needs to get all those documentary films. AI upscale what he can from DVD rips and files and compressions, and then put them on thumbsticks, and then just sell 32 gigabyte thumbsticks. You can stick them in an Xbox, a PlayStation, just about anything out there. And now we have physical media. And by the way, if you want, it's very easy to copy those over to other thumb drives to hand out to people. So without further ado, here is Invisible Empire.
So is there anything else about the ruling class we should know? Politicians, business leaders, and media figures are often portrayed as pillars of morality while they describe themselves as Christian conservatives. Nothing could be further from the truth. In reality, many of the elite are groomed at a young age to take part in occult rituals. Those who attend Yale are indoctrinated into the Order of Skull and Bones, an elite secret society cloaked as a fraternal order.
Yale University is 300 years old this year, and were you to visit its campus, you would see that it still has exotic clubhouses, which look like tombs where Yale's legendary secret societies meet. Their prestige and importance have largely evaporated, but the rituals are still a secret. And so when we heard that some enterprising characters had managed to spy on the famous Skull and Bones Society, we couldn't resist.
Skull and Bones, people say it's a fraternity at Yale University, but it's really a postgraduate organization. So it was founded in 1832. And it's not like a normal fraternity. People don't pledge. These people choose who they want to come. So they do the recruiting. They recruit 15 people every year. People who they see are going to be powerful people in the future. So they're recruited when they're a junior in college. A lot of these people come from really wealthy and influential families because they know that this person has the resources to then elevate them to a position of power that can benefit the club.
The video shows the neophytes, or initiates, kissing a skull, then performing a mock human sacrifice. Horrific screams caught on tape include chants of, "The devil equals death, death equals the devil."
True. Famous alums include Senators John Kerry and John Chafee, to name two, cabinet secretaries such as Averell Harriman, and 3 presidents, William Taft, George Bush, and George W. Bush, who's been reluctant to talk about Skull and Bones.
Does it still exist? The thing is so secret, I'm not even sure it still exists.
Former Skull and Bones members and current members have been presidents, heads of the CIA, senators, heads of business. I mean, huge, huge corporations. These people have the network that brings them to such a position of power that most people could only dream of.
Bush would run against his fellow bonesman and distant cousin John Kerry in 2004.
You both were members of Skull and Bones, a secret society at Yale. What does that tell us? Not much, because it's a secret. Is there a secret handshake? Is there a secret code? I wish there were something secret I could manifest. 322, a secret number? There are all kinds of secrets, Tim.
You were both in Skull and Bones, the secret society.
It's so secret we can't talk about it.
What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go wild.
I'm sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the web.
Number 322?
This is an elaborate, occult, ritualistic entry into this group that they are now a member of for life.
This culture of death and the occult continues long after college. Later on in life, these pagan rituals carry on in the redwoods of Sonoma, California.
And what is the Bohemian Grove? Well, it's a kind of summer camp for the powerful, an all-male gathering in great secrecy.
This group was formed in the late 1800s by artists, industrialists, and politicians. Bohemian attendees worship the owl as their deity. The Aztecs, Mayans, and other natives of Mesoamerica considered the owl a symbol of destruction and death. This is why the opening ritual for the club is the cremation of care. During the ritual, the effigy of a baby is rowed across the water by the Grim Reaper and given to a high priest, who then tosses it on a fiery sacrificial altar of a 40-foot owl god. It is an earth-based ritual in which care is burned away. The conscience is symbolically cast aside so that they may ignore the pain they have inflicted on others for the advancement of their own agendas.
With this ceremony called the cremation of care, that begins the 2-week encampment where the body of dull care, symbolizing woes and concerns, is burned on an altar in front of a big owl statue. When that ceremony ends, they all start to cheer and yell.
You have to ask yourself why it is that somebody would want to do that, let alone these elite people. And if you look at the elite throughout history, many of the people that achieve pinnacles of power are into the occult. They seek a supernatural way to gain power.
Why are Christian conservatives such as the Bushes and Newt Gingrich attending the Grove?
And I recognize I'm not going to be invited to Renaissance Weekend or that Bohemian deal where Newt, Rush, and Dick all sit in a teepee naked beating on tom-toms.
Why does the media barely mention the Grove? Because many of them are in attendance. Late political cartoonist Phil Frank of the San Francisco Chronicle draws a reporter thinking about his loyalties to Bohemian Grove as he takes notes for a story.
Stories about what happens in these redwoods are hard to come by. A campground statue reminds Bohemians to keep their mouths shut about the Grove.
Many world events have been shaped at the Grove, including the creation of the atomic bomb.
Discussions at the Grove in the 1930s helped lead to the development of nuclear power and the atomic bomb.
Every Republican president since Calvin Coolidge has been a member, as well as many Democrats, including Jimmy Carter.
If you look at the membership lists of the Bohemian Grove and the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderberg Group, a lot of the key level people are overlapping and are involved in numerous groups.
In addition to pagan rituals that take place there, this all-male club also deals with darker themes through the plays Montezuma, which feature Aztec human sacrifice, and Faust, which feature Mephisto. Some of these plays are disturbingly flamboyant. Many of the elitists have a penchant for cross-dressing and singing show tunes. Perhaps that is why much of the all-male staff also happen to be homosexuals.
Well, each year, many of them seem to have a stunt or try to come up with a stunt. Last year, in 1980, the popular button was Free the Fortune 500.
Bohemian Grove that I attend one time at a time. It is the most faggot goddamn thing you will ever imagine.
In 2004, the New York Post reported that gay porn star Chad Savage would be servicing moguls at the Bohemian Grove.
We got to take a break. Now, we're going to shift not so much just from the Grove, but into this network of not only fake Christians and closeted homosexuals, but yes, people that abuse children. Before we get to that other part, we're also going to show you more information on the Grove and the rituals itself. This is the Alex Jones Show. Remember to support Infowars.com by going to InfoWarsStore.com, getting the shirts. This one's old school right here, and the products back after this. And we are back. It is the Alex Jones Show. I am Jason Bermas. And before we get back to the documentary film, what really turns into the high-level blackmail operations via call boys in D.C. that was outed in the Franklin scandal, I think it's important to really go over the owl itself and a guy named George T. Bromley. Now, this book right here that I'm holding, you can get it in PDF, but the physical copy is now well over 100 years old. And like I said, I'm a history buff. So when you get surprises like this, you get pretty happy. When I opened it up, it actually has the real newspaper clipping about the Bohemian Grove honoring their best loved man and also their high priest when he died in 1909. It's 115 years old. And it tells the story of Bromley, who again is into the occult, and kind of helps transform the organization as, again, they get rid of the Buddha. They keep a lot of their Druidic outfits. Here's the Buddha back in the day before the owl's there, and here they are in some of their attire. Now, I want to highlight some of the again, occultic aspects and really do as thou wilt mentality. I'm not joking when I say I have 9 of the annals right next to me. In fact, and again, some of these are now over 100 years old as well. I can only pick up so many, but anybody can go to eBay, right? And this is the original program or poster book. Okay, and notice again, care. There's a big, we don't care They're very illustrative of the people who they are. And by the way, you can also find out who ends up playing the high priest throughout the years. John Williams recently was playing the high priest in this year. Right here, you can see it's Harold E. Rhodes. Okay, this is 1989, I believe. This is their program book. And again, you can garner a lot of information about this group just by going and shopping on there. I do this all the time to see some of their plays. And this is the latest one. Anybody wants to shell out $1,500 and send it my way, I'd love it. A Bohemian Rhapsody. And there's the flag with the fire behind it and the woods in front, right? And here's the cremation of care in 2016. And I think this is where I saw John Williams. Yeah, that's it. John Williams, we're talking about the guy that composed Star Wars stuff. That great composer. Because the San Francisco Orchestra, they're members by default because they play the music here, okay? That's a reality. So again, cremation of care. I just wanted to show this right here with the death theme on there. There's a lot of death, a lot of devil stuff. And this I wanted to show you. It's going to be a transition, okay, into what we're talking about here. Men dressed in drag, as you saw at the end here. The Dream Machine. See that? They got the rainbow. This is 81. This is the Low Jinks. And right here you can see cabaret women. Women aren't allowed there, okay? And when you look at who was playing what, right here you can see there's the cabaret group, all played by men. You just saw the pictures in the documentary. And, you know, again, to get back to kind of the occult stuff, Demon Run, another Low Jinks play, Demon Run. Oh, that's fun, Jason. How about Dig the Devil? It's all just fun. 1995 Low Jinks. So we're going to go back. We're going to play more of the documentary piece. Now getting into the trafficking after the break, we're going to elaborate on that high-level trafficking. It is the Alex Jones Show.
In recent years, several politicians have been outed in scandals, including Senator Larry Craig, who tried to solicit sex from an undercover officer in 2007. Even more shocking, it was revealed in 2004 that right-wing blogger James Guckert, who had unprecedented access to the White House during the Iraq War, was actually Jeff Gannon, a madam and male prostitute for MilitaryStuds.com. During his 2 years writing for GOP USA and Talon News, Gannon officially made over 200 appearances at the White House. Oddly enough, over 24 of these visits would take place when there were no scheduled briefings. He failed to check in or out with the Secret Service on many other occasions, coming and going as he pleased. These type of activities are not new to the White House. In 1989, headlines involving callboys in the White House rocked the cover of the Washington Times.
The Washington Times reported today that unidentified White House aides in the Carter, Reagan, and Bush administrations now are being investigated for using the services of a callboy ring. The paper reports that 2 of the male prostitutes were given a late-night tour of the White House last year.
Hundreds of credit card receipts obtained by the Washington Times confirm that its clients were key officials of the Reagan and Bush administrations, military officers, congressional aides, and U.S. and foreign businessmen with close social ties to Washington's political elite. This ring extended beyond the White House and into Congressman Barney Frank's bedroom.
Barney Frank, one of 2 openly homosexual members of Congress, acknowledged having used a male prostitute, whom he then hired as a personal employee. The man had keys to Frank's basement apartment on Capitol Hill. Frank paid him approximately $20,000 out of his own pocket to be his housekeeper and driver. But as first reported in today's Washington Times, the man was on probation for sex crimes and a drug conviction, and he ran a prostitution business out of Frank's home.
Although Frank tried to claim ignorance, Stephen Goby, the prostitute in question, claimed that Frank was completely aware of what was going on and was even receiving free and discounted sexual services. The fix seemed to be in. Frank was threatening members of Congress to remain silent prior to being exposed in this sex ring.
Massachusetts Democrat Barney Frank, a homosexual, threatened to expose fellow congressmen he knew to be gay unless they stopped spreading rumors.
Questions stopped and Frank walked away with a slap on the wrist. Some members of the Ethics Committee were disgusted.
Do we tolerate, do we condone a member of this body who knowingly permits a house of prostitution to be operated out of his residence?
You have just heard one of the most edited, selective garbage that has ever been put forth, in my opinion, in this House.
Again, we see people of the highest levels of power involved in the most repulsive and decadent of crimes.
They couldn't care.
We sure do. We sure do. And it's continued to this day. Now, only got a couple minutes before the break. I want to give everybody a preview for what we're going to do in the final segment, because if you look, you can still find it. This is Paul Bonacci. And the interview behind me is with Ted Gunderson. And one of the things, there's a book before the Franklin scandal called The Franklin Cover-Up by one of the lawyers that represented Bonacci, Troy Bonner, Alicia Owens, the Franklin kids, okay? And that book even names more names than the Franklin scandal. However, it is not as well documented. And really, it's the follow-up that was trying to disprove what they said. In some of these interviews, multiple personalities come out. It doesn't seem like this could be real. But Bonacci himself says he was there when NAMBLA was first started, the North American Man-Boy Love Association. And in this particular clip behind me, talks about Frank and another high-level individual. We're going to play the first 3 minutes of this video. Again, you can find it out there. It's about 8 minutes long, but there's two other ones. This is an interview with Bonacci and Gary Caradori, who was doing an investigative piece, and apparently had some things on the plane that exploded with him and his son. He was a pilot, small plane, big explosion. End of investigation. And then if you want to watch one of those depositions in which, those personalities come out, you can do that as well. These are still on the internet. I suggest people go and grab them before they are fully scrubbed. It is the Alex Jones Show. I am Jason Bermas. I encourage you to go support Alex Jones over at InfoWarsStore.com. I've got a show Monday through Friday at Patriot.tv. I'd encourage people to check that out. It's a great interview and beyond show. So guys, support Infowars.com through InfoWarsStore.com, and we'll be back after this. Final segment of the Alex Jones Show. We've been talking about the Bohemian Grove and beyond, and really fact from fiction, allegations, eyewitnesses, real investigations, and real documentary evidence. And I do want to remind people, American dictators, martial law, they are great tools to this day. I think Invisible Empire and New World Order Defined is as important as ever, as is my follow-up, Shade the Motion Picture. Because again, we got certain things going viral, and we need to bring a semblance of reality and truth and the real stuff out there. I mean, there is no doubt that was going down over at Barney Frank's apartment. And if you saw the little sub-headline, it said the school was a base. Go check out the Chevy Chase School in that incident. I believe it was the vice principal who was also named as somebody who was involved in that ring. So what we're going to do now, and again, the Franklin scandal, is we're going to show Bonacci. And as non-graphic as possible, when I first read the Franklin cover-up, the predecessor to this, and I read the account, which supposedly took place at the Bohemian Grove with men dressed in ritualistic gear, and they were brought in there by a helicopter into the redwoods, and there was a weird ring, and they did a weird ritual, and essentially, there were three of them, and there was like this Tarzan-type sexual play the kids were supposed to put on, and at the end of it, as Gunderson said, one of the children was killed, and they were forced to, let's just say they were forced to do bad things to an already really bad situation, because I don't want to go that much farther, huh? And this all seems unimaginable. But then you look into Lawrence King, who is this guy running a bank, a darling of the Republican Party, like literally at the Republican National Convention, singing at the opening, God Bless America, right? Opening it up. He's the guy I mean, whoa. And these things are more than possible. So the audio is not great on this, but this is Gunderson talking to Bonacci. We're only going to play the first 3 minutes or so. So let's jump right into that. Oh, sorry, we got to do this.
Like some of them had bodyguards. You know, they'd come in and look around. You know, and they'd always be like, they'd always have forward guys that would go in before they would. When they get shot, I guess the forward guy would get shot. And that was mainly with the congressmen and stuff. The governors, we went to different states and we met with, I think I was only with 2 governors.
What state did you go to and when?
There was one out in New York or Massachusetts. I've been trying to figure that one out because we were in, where we were at was like real close to either side. So I don't know where it was at, but I do know that I met with Senator Barney Franks, who was from Boston, or something like that.
Is he U.S. Senator?
I believe so. Barney Franks.
Did he molest you?
He had sexual relations with me. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's later.
Is it Franks? F-R-A-N-K-S?
And there it is, Barney Frank, somebody that we covered. There's a really bad scan of that cover story. And if I move my head, school used as base for sex ring. Okay, forget it just as an apartment. You know, this is something that almost nobody talks about. And Frank, again, because he threatened everybody, was allowed to continue in government. But let's continue with what Bonacci has to say.
Okay, who are the governors? Can you remember? Did you recognize any of the politicians?
I don't recognize too many of them. I didn't ask who they were. The only ones I really knew was Studs, a guy named Gall. Were any state senators from Nebraska, as far as I remember?
Did you recognize, aside from the fact that you had sex with some of these politicians, at some of these parties, did you recognize any prominent senators or congressmen or anybody, even though you may not have had sex with them?
A lot of the parties I went to with King had prominent people, because at Washington, D.C., whenever we were down there, you guys had parties.
So he's talking about parties and bars and the connection to Lawrence.
At the beginning of the party, you had a lot of young guys and stuff that were servers. They'd sometimes serve stuff, sometimes we'd be up in the background, we'd be walking around the party and stuff. Nothing was to take place then.
So notice right there, he talks about the servers aspect. Nothing takes place at the party. Did you notice that at the Bohemian Grove, the gentleman who was a server, the fact that they're hiring gay porn stars to serve them? Maybe there's a pattern here. Is there a pattern breaking out? I don't know.
After the party was over, the ones that were involved with him, or the ones that he was trying to get political favors from, that won whatever they wanted, they would stay or they'd come in after the party was over, or the next day. See, so at the party, nothing even abnormal. I mean, if somebody was in there and stuff, they'd see no abnormal activities going on, so they would, honestly be able to say that. I've been to parties, but I've never seen anything. So, but I've seen some parties down in Washington. I've seen President Bush there, which I'd rather not talk about him.
What year was that? Was he president or vice president?
Vice president. That's when he was still vice president.
So let's just stop that, because I'd rather not talk about him as he looked down. Now, I'm not accusing George H.W. Bush of doing anything, but he sure is at the Bohemian Grove. And he's got all the funny spooks around him. And his son, who gets brought into Skull and Bones, one of the rituals they show you in The Good Shepherd is them in the coffin. Now, it's said in that coffin, you are to confess all of your sexual history as you pleasure yourself, and they piss on you, basically. A lot of that is in the film. Just lovely stuff, great people, the kind of organization that you want to join. A lot of things that you don't know about George W. Bush Not the one we were just talking about, the one that was in the film and kissing another grown bald man's head who's the head of militarystuds.com and a fake news outlet. That one? Yeah. He's also, he's at Yale, a male cheerleader at the time. Okay? Why don't you look up what somebody at sworn testimony said they saw during his collegiate years with his buddy Victor Ashe. Just pointing all these things out there because they need to be put into the public arena. And a lot of this stuff is, in fact, generational. A lot of this stuff is beyond belief to most people that have absorbed this narrative surrounding the people that lead us. And unfortunately, there are very, very dark aspects to their personalities and their behaviors outside of the power structures they run. And overall, that's one of the reasons that I got into this game. I'll never forget when I was at an event that Charlie Sheen had actually put together, and there were allegations against Sheen, that was on C-SPAN. And I was talking to a Hollywood producer, and he asked me why I did this. And he had actually outed and alleged that there was already a notorious pedophile who's been accused otherwise, and I'm not accusing anybody, named Bryan Singer, big Hollywood director that was just putting out a Superman film at the time. And we had that conversation. He goes, well, why are you doing this? And the reason that came up is I said, well, it's because when you get to the top of the food chain, a lot of these people are occultic pedophiles that hurt children. And that's not okay with me. I'm not on board with their vision of the future. And that's when he told me the story of being at a party with Bryan Singer, in which Bryan Singer had what appeared to be a topless 14-year-old boy on a dog leash parading him around the party as his property. If you'd like to know more about Singer, you can go check out the documentary film that is called An Open Secret. It is free. If you want to learn more about this Franklin scandal, you can also hunt down a copy of Conspiracy of Silence online. You can check out my film, Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined, for free. But to me, folks, all the issues we covered here today, it's not about left or right, Democrat, Republican, none of it. It is about right and wrong and ultimately good and evil. And I'm sorry, but the Bohemian Grove and the fruits that it has bared are on the rotten end of that evil tree. I am Jason Bermas. This was the 4th hour of the Alex Jones Show. Remember to support Alex Jones over at InfoWarsStore.com. Get the supplements, get the shirts, support independent media. I am Jason Bermas. Check my stuff out as well. Love you guys, and see you on the flip side.